Hey there, I hope you're doing well. My name is Arya and today we're going to look at some more Reddit stories. If you enjoy Reddit stories, consider liking, subscribing, and maybe hitting that notification bell too. Let's get started with today's first story. Much love, everyone. Today's first story comes from wife cheats with best friend gets destroyed. An epic nuclear revenge. Life doesn't always go the way we expect. I spent nearly 30 years climbing the corporate ladder in middle management, feeling secure in my career, but the economy proved far more unpredictable than I could have imagined. The downturn came quickly, and soon the company that seemed so stable was shrinking rapidly. I could see what was coming, but I felt powerless to stop it. As my career unraveled, I tried to keep things steady at home. I didn't want to burden my second wife, Kathy, with my troubles, especially since her real estate business was also suffering. She was barely scraping by, closing only a few sales here and there. Both of us were struggling in our separate worlds, not fully aware of the personal storms we were each dealing with at 50. I found myself back in school, a path I never expected to take. After nearly 3 decades with the same company, I was blindsided by the sudden layoffs. The severance I received wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Our house and cars were paid off, so we weren't in terrible shape financially, but it still felt like a huge shift in my life. Kathy was also struggling, but she stayed hopeful. Things are getting better, she'd say after finally landing a few showings. One day I decided to surprise her with lunch. I checked her first appointment but didn't find her there. I eventually spotted her car at her most expensive listing, a huge estate that could have brought in a big commission. When I walked in quietly, I didn't want to disturb her with a client, but then I found her in the kitchen with a man. He had his pants down and she was on her knees. They were laughing and he was making crude comments while she smiled up at him. I stood frozen for a moment, then pulled out my phone and started recording. Once I had enough, I couldn't hold back my anger. I confronted the man, firmly grabbing his collar, but quickly realized that aggression was not the answer and chose to walk away. Kathy, shocked, ran out, leaving her blouse open behind her. The man was still moaning on the ground. When I took his wallet, got his name and told him I'd see him in court, he begged me not to ruin his family, admitting he wasn't the first man Kathy had done this with. He gave me a friend's name to back up his story. After that I never spoke to Kathy again, except during the divorce. She sent me a long letter of apology claiming she had done it to save her business. I didn't bother reading past the first page before throwing it away. I tried to keep things civil during the divorce until Kathy realized I wasn't coming back, that she turned difficult at our meeting with her lawyer. I handed over the photos and said, if she fights me, these go public. I found 2 more men. She's used her sales techniques on this. Is still an alienation of affection state, and the lawsuits from their wives could ruin her. She'll likely lose her real estate license, and even if she keeps it, no one around here will hire her. I gave them an ultimatum. This deal isn't bad and it's her only shot. I want a decision by the end of the day. Her lawyer called just before the deadline. She had no choice but to agree. I wouldn't live in the house again, so she had to buy me out or sell it. She was furious when I told her she couldn't be the one to sell it to raise the money. She had to sell her sailboat and Mustang. Rumors spread. Despite my efforts to keep things quiet, and she started having trouble getting listings. Once the divorce was final, I moved away. I found a great deal on a foreclosure thanks to what I'd learned from Kathy. It was a 3-bedroom house on 9 acres with a barn and outbuildings, way more than I needed, but I figured I could sell it for a profit later. When I met with an employment counselor, they laid out the harsh reality. The job market here is even tougher, and not having a degree is holding you back. You should consider going back to school. You only need about 1.5 years to finish your degree, and recover tuition in books with nothing to lose. I enrolled in a community college that had a partnership with a university, so I could eventually get a 4-year degree. Most of the students were older, like me, trying to improve their lives. I even made some friends and started dating sometimes. Women younger than my 2 sons from my first marriage, my ex-wife, had cheated too, but the boys were older by then, and we still had a good relationship. In my last semester, I took a workshop on starting small businesses. The final project was to create and market a fake business. Our instructor paired us in teams with people we had little in common with, thinking it would spark creativity. My partner Gail was a fashion major about 20 years younger than me. She was smart, but inexperienced. I invited Gail and a few other teams over to my place for a brainstorming session. After we hit a wall with ideas, we stopped trying and started drinking. I made sure everyone had a safe spot to sleep. Gail and I ended up talking about fashion and branding. She brought up how brands, like Members Only and ICE, had made fortunes through smart marketing, even when the products weren't that great. We joked around. Looking at our friends on the couch, "What about redneck chic?" I asked. Gail laughed. "We'd have to brand it." Looking at my friend's Arap pastel sweatshirt, I said, "How about Erks?" She burst out laughing, and jeans lard, as we joked back and forth until Gail headed to bed the next morning. I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation. That's when it hit me. We had our fake business idea. My administrative and marketing skills would pair perfectly with her fashion and production expertise. I made coffee and Gail helped with breakfast as everyone else slowly woke up. Some ate, while others just nursed their coffee and juice. I asked Gail to stay after everyone left, and I shared my idea. She grinned. I was thinking the same thing. She designed a logo of a raccoon, but something was missing. Then it came to me. Wings, it's Air Raccoon. Tell us whether you find great excitement in this narrative. Press A if the video delighted you. If not, press B. Your comments really motivate me to compile more inspiring and significant narratives. After all, she agreed and adjusted the design, and it looked much better. She also created the Lard DOS logo, a cheeky design shaped like 2 bum cheeks for the rear pocket. We now had a design business plan and marketing strategy. Time to move forward. Gail didn't have money, but had the talent for production. I could handle the rest later. I asked her, "Wouldn't it be great to have real products, not just graph?" "What do we need?" She explained. We'd need a professional, programmable, monogram machine costing anywhere from $7,000 to $15,000 new or less. If we found a used one, that's more than I thought. I said, "But it's doable." Gail. "How about this? I'll fund the startup, you handle design and production, and I'll take care of the rest." She thought about it for just a moment and agreed. I hired a lawyer to draw up a fair deal. The company would be called Redneck Chic Clothing Company, and I own the trademarks for Air Raccoon, while Gail would own the Lard DOS trademark. Since I was funding everything, I got 65% and Gail got 35%. She wasn't thrilled with the split, but eventually agreed, knowing I could easily replace her. We found a $12,000 machine for $4,000 from a seller, desperate to unload it, and had it delivered to my garage. After some training, Gail was thrilled and got to work. We bought 6 dozen assorted t-shirts, men's in black and dark red, women's in pink, yellow, and gray, plus black and white hats. Gail programmed the machine, and soon it was running, stitching our logos in a blend of silver, white, and black threads. The wings on the raccoon had a gossamer look, exactly as we envisioned. We had Alice, Jamie, and some friends model the clothes. Gail insisted on getting an overlock machine to sew prototype jeans, which wasn't as pricey as the monogrammer. We even got help from some students in the TV and radio department to make a commercial. The ad featured Alice wearing our work jeans and Air Raccoon shirt, helping Jamie on the farm. Later she wore the dressier version with a pink shirt, confidently looking into the camera. The tagline, "Lard as jeans, definitely not for little girls." The instructor was shocked by our success, and we aced the course. More importantly, we started getting real product requests and built a strong local following. Gail and I had different ideas about the business, but we agreed on many key points. I had a 48x36 metal building on my property, so we applied for a zone waiver. Is a cottage industry got approved and remodeled it. We added insulation, a heat pump, a 2-stall bathroom and a break room. We installed 12 new Melcro machines and advertised for employees. We were fortunate. The area had a history of textile work, so there were many skilled sewers. We received 900 applications for just 12 positions. We tested each candidate urine, they could handle the machines. By the end of the week, we had 11 hires. The last hire came unexpectedly, a woman in her 60s named Mavis. She didn't apply formally but showed up asking for a chance. She had 50 years of experience, sewing everything from shirts to sales, and was in desperate need of work. After her husband passed despite not knowing the machines, she was confident she could figure it out. I gave her a shot and she teared up with gratitude. Gail wasn't thrilled at first, but was impressed by how quickly Mavis learned she mastered the basics. In 3 hours we paid employees minimum wage, plus a production bonus if they operated the machines at 80% efficiency, averaging $9 an hour. We couldn't offer full insurance but arranged a deal for 4 doctor visits a year for $20 and up to 3 free generic prescriptions. It wasn't much, but the workers appreciated the effort. Most of them were middle-aged. With experience in the textile industry, Mavis naturally became the floor manager, acting like a grandmother and motivator to the team. We had each employee make a shirt in all 5 colors with their names monogrammed, which became their uniforms. They voted to work 9-hour days Monday through Thursday and 4 hours on Friday, with overtime available if needed. Birthdays were celebrated with a party, paid day off or extra pay, and we always gave a nice gift. Mavis got a 19 inches flat screen, a Blu-ray player and a year of Netflix as a birthday gift. She cried for an hour before heading home. Gail grumbled about the cost. As money was starting to become her focus for a year, we kept expanding, adding a mini shift of college kids, working night and Saturdays, but still couldn't keep up. Eventually, I told Gail we needed to find a bigger facility. How big, she asked, trying to hide her excitement. After reviewing projections for a month, I replied, big enough for at least 100 machines and space for your jeans line. We might need 2 buildings. Gail was thrilled. We found a large facility and a smaller one nearby. We planned to bring in 25 machines at a time with a full setup. In a year, Gail began shopping for overlock sewing machines. To start the jeans production, the business had grown too big for us to handle alone. We needed managers for the plant production office, HR, and accounting. Our original workers were nervous about the changes, fearing the loss of the informal environment they liked. I reassured them during a meeting. "We're not moving you. Your jobs are safe, I'll still be around, and Mavis Turner will manage day-to-day operations starting Monday." Everyone cheered. Mavis was a natural leader and had already been solving many floor problems. She was hesitant at first but accepted the role when I doubled her pay. I also gave all the original workers a bonus of 2 weeks' pay as a thank you. Gail thought I was spoiling them, but I believed in investing in loyalty. The real branding breakthrough came from Mavis. Her great-nephew, a race car driver, had just moved up to the Busch Series, the equivalent of AAA in baseball. He was one of the few black racers on the circuit. Mavis asked for a day off to see him, and I had an idea. "I'll give you the day off with pay. If you bring him by for lunch, I'll treat everyone. If I can have a few minutes alone with him." She was thrilled, and I saw a golden opportunity for our brand. I did some research on Mavis's nephew. He had a solid racing record and was well liked. He was married with 1 child and his wife was on the plus side, which aligned well with our brand when Mavis brought him in. He was friendly, posed for photos, and made everyone laugh, gaining some loyal fans. That day later, I got him alone in my office. "How'd you get into racing?" I asked. He explained his dad had been a mechanic who dabbled in dirt track racing. He started with go-karts at age 10 and moved on to dirt track cars by 15. Now he was set to race in the Busch Series. I was impressed. "How do you think you'll do with the right sponsorship? We're running on a tight budget, but I should do all right." I cut to the chase. "Let's talk business. My company's growing, But we're not there yet. Send me some numbers to get a raccoon on your car. In the meantime, how about doing some ads for us? You and your wife, we'll pay you the going rate and work sponsorship into the deal later. Think about it. I knew I was in over my head. I went to see my old professor, the one who'd helped me start this journey. He was happy to see me and even introduced me to his class as a success story. Afterward, over coffee, I asked if he was really retiring. Yes, after the semester, he said. I smiled. No, you're going to be vice president of development at Redneck Chic Clothing. He was stunned. Are you serious? Absolutely. I need your connections in the academic and business world. Start building a team. We'll discuss salary later. I had already talked to Gail, and she was so focused on setting up the jeans factory. She agreed without hesitation. We also got lucky with new hires. My oldest son had just been downsized, so I hired him as our controller. He and his pregnant wife moved into a house I leased as a signing bonus. She became my personal assistant. Gail then introduced me to her Aunt Amaryllis, who preferred to be called Amy at 46. She was fit, professional, and very attractive without realizing it. I had hired her as our office manager. I figured even if she wasn't the best at the job, it would be nice to have her around. Zeist. I know. Finally, my youngest son joined us as our materials manager. We didn't need a warehouse yet, but with bigger plans on the horizon, it was only a matter of time. We held a meeting with the key team. Gail, Amy, Ralph, my old professor Barry, our lawyer, Greg, my son, Jerry, and me. We needed to establish a chain of command to expand the company. Nationally, I was named CEO. Gail became VP of the jeans division. Ralph would manage the t-shirt plant. Greg and Amy would oversee the office, and Jerry would focus on streamlining materials and potential warehouse issues. Debbie, Greg's wife, would help with expansion projects. We set salaries and agreed on profit sharing, though there were no ownership options. Yet our sales were booming, and we struggled to keep up. The first 25 machines were online, and for a brief time we were ahead of schedule. Betty, one of the original workers, was promoted to manage the new section. Barry suggested we incorporate and consider going public, but I wasn't thrilled about it, especially since we didn't manufacture our own shirts, which were foreign-made. Jerry came to me with an idea. Why not make our own shirts in the US? He explained. There were plenty of empty factories and skilled workers, plus government incentives to hire older workers. After reviewing the costs, we found it would add about 75 cents per shirt. Gail and Barry weren't on board, but both sons, Amy and Ralph, thought it was worth exploring, especially with the Made in America appeal. Debbie had just given birth to our first granddaughter, so she couldn't travel. I went with Jerry and Amy to visit potential locations. We found a perfect mid-size building in a rural area that used to be a shirt factory. The local governments offered grants and incentives, making it an attractive option. However, Gail strongly opposed it, pushing for outsourcing to China for higher profits. I refused, saying this company will never move out of the country. It's about pride, not just profit. Jerry later pointed out that, even if we made shirts here, the fabric would still come from China. However, he had a solution, a nearby American fabric plant that could meet our needs, adding about 50 cents per shirt but making the product 100% American made together. These changes would increase costs by $125 per shirt. Ralph and Amy supported raising prices to match the higher quality. Gail continued to object, as she sourced her denim cheaply from Malaysia, boosting her division's profits. We started to disagree more frequently. At 24, Gail had changed. She wore designer clothes, expensive jewelry, and drove a Lexus. Her focus had shifted, and it was clear that money was clouding her judgment since Debbie ran errands. For me, I gave her my company SUV and drove my truck to work. Ralph got the same SUV model, thinking we'd get a better deal buying two. Amy called me for a meeting. She had taken over HR after our original hire got caught in a pill sting, which we didn't expect. At 53, Amy had the right qualifications and was now managing HR for 225. hourly workers and 40 salaried employees across our operations, it was time to implement a health plan. Amy invited me to the sewing plant where she had been staffing the operation for 6 weeks. The plant was almost ready to produce its first shirts, though still not fully staffed. I flew in on Friday to check on the progress. Amy greeted me with a big hug at the airport, and I realized how long it had been since my last relationship. It had been 4 years since my split from Kathy and 3 since we started the company. I hadn't dated in almost 2 years. Noticing me glance at her, Amy teased, "What are you doing?" I blushed, just enjoying the view. She laughed, joking that some people thought I might be gay. We arrived at the plant where I noticed tents and a crowd gathered. It turned out to be our first annual company picnic. Amy introduced me to the employees as the founder and CEO, and I was touched by the applause. I made sure to talk to each employee and their families. The highlight was when the oldest employee, a 67-year-old grandmother, presented me with the first shirt made at the plant. I had it monogrammed by Mavis, framed and hung in my office. The company was thriving. Greg kept our finances stable, and Mavis and her team worked on new product designs, including a long tail line of collared shirts with a larger raccoon logo. We were also developing jackets with an even bigger logo. Mavis, now 65, even made a stuffed raccoon toy for her granddaughter, complete with wings. During a rare half-day off, I stopped by the SE Mavis, who admitted she missed sewing but was proud of her work. When I asked about her retirement plans, she hugged me and said, "Not until you run me out. I've never been happier and am so grateful for this opportunity." I smiled and replied, "You'll probably outlast me." I was captivated by the stuffed raccoon Mavis made, so I had her make one for my granddaughter, which became her favorite toy. Mavis even made one for me that I kept on my desk after a year of seeing it. I realized the potential. No stuffed animals were made in the US anymore. I put Jerry in charge, and a month later he had a plan. We set up a small factory with 14 employees using older machines which produced high-quality toys. Gail opposed the idea, but I made the factory independent and owned solely by me under the Redneck Chic license, which appeased her. Since Mavis designed the raccoon, I gave her 25 cents per toy sold, and her quarterly checks rival her salary. Gail, now mostly at the jeans plant, had a new boyfriend, and Greg wasn't impressed with him. Meanwhile, we signed Will Turner, Mavis's nephew and a rising race car driver, and his wife Mary as endorsers. Initially hesitant, Mary eventually embraced our brand modeling. Our jeans and shirts will promoted our products at the racetrack, handing out hats and shirts, and even launched our long tail line when we raised prices. After going all American, sales dipped briefly, so I posted a video explaining the price hike and used the phrase, "How much is your country worth to you?" Sales quickly rebounded. The stuffed raccoons became a hit, and we donated them to factory workers and local hospitals. ESPN featured Will handing out toys, nicknaming him the Raccoon Fairy, which caught on among his fans and fellow drivers. His car even featured the raccoon logo, boosting his popularity, especially with kids, as demand grew. We doubled the toy production. However, the stress of expanding the company and long work hours caught up to me, and I collapsed from exhaustion. My doctor warned me to start exercising and delegating more, or I'd face serious health issues surrounded by my family and team in the hospital. I realized it was time to make some changes. Debbie and Maria gave me a hard time, saying I needed to live long enough to meet my grandson due in 6 months. Maria also revealed she was pregnant, showing me her engagement ring and teasing, "You've got a lot to live for, old man." They joked that I needed a wife to keep me alive long enough to nag me end of life. Amy and others stopped by, and Ralph and Barry teased me about taking it easy. What surprised me most was Amy, who was emotional and scolded me for not realizing how many people depended on me. Mavis too hugged me tightly, crying and making me promise to take care of myself. After 3 days in the hospital, I returned to the office where production stopped. As everyone hugged me, Amy and Mavis then set up a schedule where I would work until lunchtime, then go home to rest. Amy often joined me for lunch to ensure I ate healthy, keeping me from indulging in fast food. I came to enjoy these lunches, especially since Amy and I hadn't spent much time together before we talked about our lives, and I shared my experiences with failed marriages due to cheating. Amy opened up about her own divorce 6 years ago. Sharing her hatred for cheaters and how she was glad to be rid of her ex-husband, I asked if she was seeing anyone and she joked that her boss kept her too busy for a relationship. I laughed and admitted that, while had once sworn off marriage, I was rethinking it, believing that I could eventually find the right woman. The conversation shifted when Amy mentioned Gail's talk of moving the jeans operation to China. Gail had been spending more time at the main office and was engaged to someone. Amy didn't like Gail, seemed frustrated with being a business owner instead of pursuing her original dream of being a fashion designer, and she still resented not getting a 50/50 split. When we set up the business, I was surprised, as I had felt 35% was generous. Considering I came up with the concept name and funding, it made me think that perhaps it was time for us to part ways. Amy seemed surprised, especially since Gail was her niece. I don't think that's a good idea. Gail needs your guidance, and she wouldn't do nearly as well on her own. I grunted, just talking, but make sure she knows. No part of my company is going to China. We're making good money and 300 Americans depend on us, not counting our suppliers. Amy nodded. I'll tell her, but if she pushes, do what's best for the company. I trust you to make the right call. She held my hand for a moment before realizing and pulling back. We promoted Jerry to help with daily operations and Ralph took on more of my duties. Since I was working half days, Debbie became Ralph's assistant. I knew something was up when Greg invited me to lunch on Sunday. Both Debbie and Maria were pregnant. Debbie was 7½ months along and Maria was 5½ months during a quiet meal. I finally asked what's going on. The women left and the boys hesitated before telling me the issue. Mom is in bad shape. She lost her job, caught her husband cheating, and her house is in foreclosure. Can we help her? Greg explained. They had found her an apartment and would cover the first year's rent and utilities, while Jerry would add her to his phone plan. Then Jerry added, she needs a job. Gail's assistant just quit and we think she'd be a good fit. Gail might be more polite since she's our mom. I didn't like the idea, but reluctantly agreed. Fine, but keep her away from me. If she causes problems. She's out. The boys were relieved. Thanks, Pop, you won't even know. She's there. Maria and Debbie hugged me, clearly happy with my decision. Maria said, you're a good man, Papacita. Debbie whispered her thanks, adding that she'd been against letting Rosalind move in with them. I told Amy about it at lunch on Tuesday. She wasn't thrilled. Are you sure you don't need more stress? I'll manage. She's their mother and Gail will keep her busy. Amy laughed. Gail wasn't happy, but I used all my HR skills to get her to accept it. She's calmed down a bit since Rosalind arrived the next week and immediately started complaining. Her apartment was too small. The commute was too long and she didn't like Gail. Greg and Jerry had a talk with her. We're doing our best, Mom. If you don't like the apartment, you can move, but you'll have to pay your own rent. Gail can be tough, but maybe you can be a good influence if you can't handle it. We'll help you find another job. That shut her up. She knew she wouldn't find a better job and the thought of paying her own way didn't appeal to her. I saw her 2 weeks later at a meeting. She'd gained some weight, had shorter hair, but still had those striking blue eyes. She greeted me. Zach. How are you? I'm fine. Rose. How have you been? She didn't like being called Rose, but she kept calm. I've had better days, thanks for your help. It means a lot to me and the boys. So how do you like being a rich business owner? A bit different from what we imagined years ago. I smiled. Didn't expect a crowd of grandkids either. Can't wait to meet our grandsons. Before I could say more, Amy walked over and put her hand on my arm. There was some silent tension between her and Rosalind, like a mental standoff. Amy then said, time to start the meeting. Zach, let's keep it short. I want to try that new Mexican place for lunch. She addressed Rosalind with a dismissive Rosalind, and I saw Rosalind tense up, trying to lighten things. I said, let's get to business. I'll see you at Jerry's house for lunch on Sunday. Amy gripped my arm tighter. When I mentioned it and I began wondering, was she jealous during lunch? I caught Amy's eye a few times. She asked, what do I have food on? My blouse. No, just a question. Do we still contribute to the Gill Center? If so, can you get me 2 tickets to Jersey, boys? She nodded. I'm sure I can arrange that. Great. Now, a business question. If I take an employee as a date, would that be an issue? She looked serious. I wouldn't recommend it. Relationships with employees can lead to trouble, especially if they end badly. Don't mix business and personal life, Zach. I pretended to be disappointed. Too bad. I was hoping you'd go with me. I know you love musicals. She nearly choked on her tea before recovering. You'll pick me up at 6. We'll have dinner at a nice restaurant I choose and we'll attend the show as corporate officers supporting the center. This is strictly a business event, not a date. Clear? So that's a yes. I asked. Yes. Now finish your lunch and don't touch the salt shaker or you won't be able to applaud. On Friday, I sent her flowers on Friday with a card reading in appreciation of a loyal employee, strictly business. Of course, Debbie heard about the flowers and confronted me. Flowers for Amy, you romantic. I tried to downplay it, just a gesture of appreciation, before she could say more. Maria burst in. Is it true? She asked Debbie, who nodded. Maria grinned and said, just so. You know, Amy took a half-day vacation, so did we going for a spa treatment and shopping? You better appreciate this. Maria cut me off. Give it up, Pop. She's been into you for about a year. She nearly collapsed when you got sick. Men are clueless. I've seen how you look at her when she's not looking. You want her just as much. Debbie jumped in. Don't screw this up. If you do Sunday, lunches with your grandkids will be a thing of the past. I leaned back and smiled. What happened to my right to privacy? Long gone. Good luck, Papacita. Maria laughed as she and Debbie left. I sent Amy flowers Friday morning with a card that read in appreciation of a loyal employee, strictly business. Of course, within 45 minutes Debbie stormed into my office. Flowers for Amy, you romantic, she teased. I shrugged, just a gesture of appreciation. No big deal. Maria then charged in, grinning. She took a half-day vacation, Pop, so did we? Were all going for a spa day followed by shopping? You better appreciate it. I tried to protest, but Maria cut me off. Face it, Pop, she's into you, and you want her too. Debbie added, don't blow this. You need her, and she needs you. Plus, we could use a better mother-in-law. I gave in. Anything else? Maria checked her watch. Yeah, Greg and Jerry are coming to take you shopping for a new suit. You're not wearing that old stuff, and forget your truck. A limo. We'll pick you up. This Nate is going to cost you, but you're rich. You're welcome. Greg and Jerry walked in just as she finished and everyone laughed except me. Let's get you a suit, that's actually from this decade, they said. I sat in the limo feeling like a nervous teenager on a first date. When I got to Amy's house, I admired her well-kept yard. Neat, attractive and beautiful, just like her. When she opened the door, I was speechless. She wore a perfect little black dress, conservative, yet sexy, knee-length and perfectly fitted to her curves. Her hair was styled in an elegant, semi-bun, understated but alluring. She let me squirm for a moment before saying, for God's sake, Zach, say something. I blurted out, you're so beautiful. She blushed and giggled. Thank you. Glad to know your daughter-in-law's efforts weren't wasted. I feel like a princess. I smiled. They getting upgraded in the will, and I mean it. You're beautiful, come princess. Your carriage awaits. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, took my arm, and we headed out. We went to a new Thai restaurant. Amy loved spicy food, but I couldn't handle it as well. She ordered both spicy and mild dishes, feeding me small bites. While I wiped my brow afterward, we walked to the venue on the warm evening and I got used to the feel of her hand on my arm. The performance was excellent and we had some of the best seats in the house. She held my hand the entire time. Afterward she said, "Thank you so much for tonight. I loved it." "Me too. Too bad it's over." I replied. She stopped over. "Who said that?" I'm keeping you up past your bedtime, and if you're lucky, I might tuck you in." I blushed and she laughed. We went to a club that catered to our age group with a Beatles tribute band playing. She excused herself, and when she returned her hair was down. For the first time, long and beautiful, we sipped drinks and enjoyed the music. She was itching to dance, so I asked Juana and she dragged me onto the floor. I wasn't great at dancing, but the slow dances made up for it. She pressed close to me, and we took breaks for me to catch my breath at one point. Her friends, Jerry and Sky, stopped by Sky's ankle herd, so I asked Jerry to dance with Amy. She looked at me and I nodded, watching her dance. Happily, after a few fast songs, they returned when a slow one began. "Thank you," she said. "Most men would be jealous." I smiled. "They're your friends and I want you to have fun, but if it were a stranger I'd expect you to say no. If you're with me, you're with me," she giggled. "I'm with you, honey." We had coffee with them afterward and they gave us a card for their dance studio. Before we left, we signed up for lessons in the limo. I told her, "You don't need lessons. I used to teach part-time. It'll be fun, and dancing with the same partner makes you better, plus it'll get you in shape better than bowling," she said with a smile. I didn't mess things up by trying to come in after walking Amy to her door. I did get a few nice kisses, which was enough for now. On Sunday, before Rosalind arrived, the girls teased me and the guys asked if I'd scored, while their wives playfully scolded them when Rosalind arrived and saw the smiles. She asked, "What's everyone so happy about?" Jerry grinned and said, "Went on his first date in over 2 years and had a great time." It wasn't entirely true, but no one corrected him. Rosalind didn't seem amused, which dampened the mood until Ashley, their 2-year-old, woke up and lightened the atmosphere. Rosalind noticed Ashley's raccoon toy and commented how cute it looks. "Familiar," Jerry explained. "It's from our company. We make them near the shirt factory and sell them online and in select stores. We've sold quite a few." Rosalind rolled her eyes. "Great, more money for you," Jerry, clearly offended, explained. "Actually, it's a non-profit foundation. Every dollar after cost goes to the Wounded Warrior Foundation to help disabled veterans with things like ramps, guide dogs, and housing modifications." I wished he hadn't mentioned it. We didn't do it for the recognition. It all started when Jerry's best friend, who lost both legs in Afghanistan, needed help. We built ramps for his house, and it led to the idea of creating the foundation. Gail insisted we keep it separate from the business, so it wouldn't affect her earnings. Bob, Jerry's friend, now works for us and oversees donations. Rosalind apologized and the rest of the afternoon went smoothly. On Monday, I received an email outlining the events I'd be attending to represent the company. Fridays and Saturdays would be busy for a while. I was still working half days and considering making it permanent. Amy joined me in Mavis for lunch, but didn't bring up the weekend. She asked if I'd seen the memo about more community involvement, which I had when Amy kissed me goodbye and called me honey. Mavis's eyes widened and she immediately pounced. "So you and Amy, about time. She loves you." "You know," I raised my hands, "we're just friends. No one's talking marriage." Mavis gave me a look. "Who?" "Well, when that wedding happens, I'll be sitting on the groom's side later." Mavis hinted that she and the girls were working on something, but wouldn't tell me what. On Friday, she made sure Amy was with me for lunch, and I knew something was up after lunch. Mavis invited me to the shop, where the girls were grinning. "You told us to experiment, so we did." Mavis said, "Get ready for a fashion show." The fashion show was mostly grandchildren, ranging from 8 months to 6 years, all wearing clothes with our logo. I thought about a children's line before, but never had time to develop it. Mavis knocked me to it and I was impressed. The designs were clever, like a jumper on the 8-month-old, with a raccoon in diapers, and a dress on a 6-year-old featuring a mother raccoon with her babies. Debbie's daughter, Ashley, wore red overalls with raccoon heads on the bib. We introduced the baby raccoon line online, and it sold out in 2 weeks. Everyone loved it except Gail, who stormed into my house while Amy and I were having lunch, furious. "You a holy, I'm the designer," she yelled. We were stunned. I tried to reason with her. "No one's undermining you. I asked about a kids line 2 years ago and you focused on jeans, now feel free to design as much as you want. She ranted some more and left. Amy sighed. She's losing it, her husband's spending money they don't have and she can't say no. He knows she has millions but doesn't understand the difference between working millions and spending millions. Worse, he talked her out of a prenup. I was shocked. There's a clause in our agreement that requires a prenup to protect the business. What was she thinking? Meanwhile, things between Amy and me progressed nicely. We attended concerts, plays, and sporting events, including races. Will was winning consistently and had a shot at Rookie of the Year. In NASCAR, we expanded our monogramming and shirt factories to keep up with demand, and Forbes featured us on the cover. As a true American success story, as Amy and I grew closer, Gail's marriage began to deteriorate. I could sense trouble coming. We attended the annual picnic at the shirt factory. The food was great and the employees, mostly women, competed fiercely in the dessert contest. Prizes ranged from $50 to $250 and the winner was a coconut cake. The local mayor and county commissioners judged the contest and the event made the local papers, along with a few photos of Amy and me goofing around. One photo showed me smearing cake on her face and another caught her kissing me in revenge. The caption identified us as the company's owner and his wife, which the kids found amusing at the hotel afterward. I was surprised when the clerk gave Amy and me key cards to the same room before I could protest. She hurried me along. I got tired of waiting. If I left it to you, we'd be in walkers before anything happened. Now, don't screw this up. It had been a long dry spell and Amy made up for lost time. That night, I managed 2 performances and a third at 6 o'clock a.m. The dance lessons had definitely helped Amy outshone both my ex-wives in every way, throwing herself completely into our time together. At 50, Amy was still trim and beautiful. She made me wait in the living room while she changed, and when she finally emerged she was wearing a sheer teddy robe and high heels. She twirled, teasing me. "Do you like this?" she asked once I regained my speech. "I say do beautiful, but it would look even better off you." She giggled. "Then it's only fair you take it off." We made love again and afterward I held her until she fell asleep. The next morning we showered together and made it to breakfast with the family. Debbie teased Amy, saying she was glowing, while Greg joked that I looked like I didn't get enough sleep. They all laughed, but I surprised them by announcing we were staying a few more days. I wanted to visit the toy factory and spend more time with Amy. Mission accomplished on the flight home. I asked, "How long until you move in?" Amy smiled, taking my hand. "I plan to spend a lot of time in your bed, but I'm not moving in right away. We need to make sure everything's right, and just so you know, I'm an old-fashioned marriage kind of woman." "Does that scare you?" I replied. "The only thing that scares me is not being the one you want." She held my hand for the rest of the flight. The first night home without her was rough. I kept waking up reaching for her. The next day we struggled through lunch with Mavis, who quickly caught on later. Amy promised to bring a suitcase over just in case she decided to stay more often. A week later, Rosalind unexpectedly showed up at my office. She wanted to talk, but I told her to get to the point after some fidgeting. She finally began reminiscing about our past and asked if we could start over. I cut her off, reminding her of her affair, the hurtful things she said, and how she tried to screw me over in the divorce. I told her that too much had happened and that we couldn't go back. I advised her to be grateful for what she had before I could say more. Amy walked in and coolly acknowledged, "Rosalind, lunchtime, honey. Should we have Mexican delivered to the house later, so we can relax?" Rosalind sat speechless and I couldn't help but enjoy it, taking a mic hand. I said, "Rose and I were just talking about old times, but I'll save the rest for another day. See you Sunday." We left before Rosalind could react at lunch. Amy noticed the look on my face. "What's on your mind? Everyone knows we're together." "I knew she was in your office as soon as your door closed. She needs to learn. I don't share if she thinks otherwise. She needs to find a new playground. I protect." What's mine? I grinned. So I'm yours. Her expression softened. Yes, you've been mine since the hospital. When I realized I was falling for you. Can you handle that I'm out of my league, but I'll spend as long as it takes to make you happy? She ran to the restroom in tears, but her kiss when she returned told me I hadn't messed up. I started looking for a ring. While she talked about redecorating, I told her anything was fine as long as she left my office alone. We were both happy. 2 weeks later, while I was browsing honeymoon brochures, my secretary called. There's a woman here who says she's your wife. I was confused. Everyone knew Rosalind by now and Amy hadn't said yes, yet I thought it was a joke until Kathy walked in. Hi Zach, surprised she asked, dressed to impress, more like disappointed. Why are you here? Her smile faded. I wanted to apologize, remember my letter. I never read past the first line. Why, she asked, trying to stay composed, because I was in too much pain. I loved you for 6 years, but then I found out you've been sleeping with clients for commissions. That's what some people call being paid for. Z. She struggled to control her temper. What do you want? Kathy? She admitted she was broke, having sold her house to keep her business afloat, but it failed anyway. Rumors about her spread and she lost clients. Now she had no money left and asked for help. Part of me felt some satisfaction, but another part felt pity. I wrote her a check. This is for the good years we had, but you need to leave town. I'm proposing to my girlfriend today and I love her more than I thought possible. I'll try to remember our good times. Her eyes widened at the check, but I cut her off when she tried to thank me. Just take it. I wouldn't be here if you hadn't betrayed me. Your actions pushed me to find success. She asked for a goodbye hug, but I refused. No, don't ask why, you won't like the answer. Just then Amy walked in. Hi honey. I just need. She saw Kathy. Sorry, I'll come back. I took her hand. No need to wait. Miss Myers was just leaving. I guided Amy out of the room, leaving Kathy behind for good. As soon as we turned the corner, Amy pulled me against the wall, kissing me passionately. I know who she is, she said. I started to explain, but she put her hand on my lips. No need. I can be jealous and you're mine. No more ex-wives. I don't know about. I shook my head. No good. I trust you, but you're too soft-hearted. It's a good thing. I'm here to keep you in line now. Don't you have something to ask me? It didn't go exactly as I'd imagined, but I got down on one knee and took out the ring from my pocket. People were passing by, secretaries and assistants heading to lunch, floor managers carrying paperwork. They all stopped and stared. As you said, I'd be lost without you. I think I need a little more supervision, and the only way to get that is by having you with me forever. Amy, love of my life. It took me 2 tries, but I believe I found the woman I was meant to be with. Please baby, marry me. It wasn't the romantic speech I had hoped for, but I got my point across. I think everyone in the hall was holding their breath as she knelt to my level. Yes, she said, plain simple and exactly the word I wanted to hear more than anything in my life. People clapped and cheered, but neither of us noticed. We stayed on the floor, kissing for nearly 5 minutes, long enough for the kids to come running down the hall. Maria and Debbie pulled Amy up and the 3 of them hugged, dancing in a circle. The boys just stood there, grinning. Stop smirking and help an old man up, I told them. They pulled me to my feet and the girls grabbed me, while Amy hugged Jerry and Greg. Within 40 minutes, the news had spread across both plants. An hour later, Mavis called. Remember, I sit on your side of the church. She reminded me. I wished I could have seen her face. You won't be sitting much since my parents have passed. You'll be the mother of the groom. She couldn't speak, so she hung up. The date was set and Amy had moved into my house full-time. We had a long talk about the future. I think I'm going to retire. The boys are doing well and Ralph will still be around to guide them. I'll stay on as CEO, but only step in if they hit a deadlock or need advice. If you retire, I retire. She said, all right, please honey. She teased, like I'm going to let you wander around alone. My new full-time job will be keeping an eye on you. Everyone was thrilled about the engagement except Gail. She hadn't been happy about much lately. She finally put an end to her husband's reckless spending and told him to get a job. If he wanted extra money, he had quit working the day after they got married. He exploded in anger, withdrew as much as he could from their accounts and left. Then he sued for divorce, asking for alimony and half of her share of the company. Barry did his job. He brought up the partnership and corporation papers that clearly excluded the business from being community property. It was a gray area, but Barry made it clear. He could drag things out for years and her husband would be paying his own fees unless a lawyer took the case on contingency. Barry had a solid reputation and most lawyers were hesitant in the end. Gail had to pay him $1.5 million to make him go away. Gail came out to our house for lunch with Amy and me. She looked exhausted and frustrated. "I want out of the company," she said bluntly. "I wanted to take the Janan business and the brand. You can have the rest." "Can we work something out?" That night Amy and I discussed it. She said it wasn't her decision, but I reminded her that we were going to be life partners and every choice from now on would affect both of us. We consulted Barr, who brought in an independent firm to appraise the business. In the end, we split it the way Gail proposed. She took the Janan company and kept the Lyric brand. I had to pay her $2 million in cash to buy out her remaining equity. Amy tried to convince Gail to stay, but Gail was determined. "I've learned a lot. It's time for me to move on and follow my own vision." After the paperwork was signed, Gail closed the factory and moved her business to China, leaving the locals devastated. I was furious, but there was nothing I could do. What I could do, however, was buy the equipment and restart under a new brand. Amy came up with our new logo, Living Large, featuring 2 big red L's on the pocket. We updated our website, sent out memos and posted on YouTube to explain the change without badmouthing Gail, though people figured it out. Gail thrived for 3 years before selling her company to a Chinese syndicate and opening a design house in La. Meanwhile, innovation thrived in our company and Maria came up with a new idea, working with Mavis on the Punk Raccoon line. Instead of the familiar cute logo, the raccoon had black bat-like wings and red eyes with skeletal outlines. We launched hoodies and tees, using kids from the community to spread the word. Amy and I have eventually married and I met her son, who had just graduated from college. We brought him into the business with Greg and Jerry, helping him along. Rosalind remarried and moved away, which, while unspoken, brought relief to the boys. Sunday dinners have become big family gatherings. Amy and I are mostly retired, attending only a monthly board meeting. Our honeymoon was a world cruise and we loved it so much that it's now an annual tradition, taking the grandkids along to give the parents a break. Life has been good. As for Mavis, she fired for 6 months, then called me one day. "Do you know who Ozzy Osbourne is?" she asked. "Yes, Mavis." "Good, because I'm quoting him. Retirement sucks. When can I come back?" I laughed and told her, "As soon as you can walk through the door." She's still going strong. I'm going to turn this one over to you. What do you make of this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, support, and time mean the world to me. So, thank you so much for being part of this. I really appreciate your time. I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.